So question 3a is a straightforward, well, fairly straightforward inequality. And, you know, inequalities, if I multiply by a plus, it doesn't affect the sign. If I multiply by a minus, it will affect the sign. But if I try and multiply both sides, or multiply either side by something that I don't know is a plus or a minus, then I don't know what to do with this sign. So I'm going to remove that hassle by multiplying by a number that I know is a plus. And you can then cancel one of those, that off with one of these, and multiply out. You end up with 3x squared plus 3x minus 1x minus 1 less than or equal to 5 times x squared plus 2x plus 1. And now, just at the very start of the question, they said x cannot be equal to minus 1. Now that should make sense here because your bottom line can never be as 0. So just make sure at the end, if you're trying to give minus 1 as a solution, that you remove it. And you can just, this will be 5 over 3, and you can just keep going with this. You'll end up with 3x squared plus 2x minus 1 less than or equal to 5x 5 over 3 x squared plus 2x plus 1. I'm going to multiply this 5 over 3 in. That gives me 5x squared plus 2x minus 1 is equal to 5 over and then I'm going to multiply everything by 3. And again, multiplying by 3 is no problem. So that gives me 9x squared plus 6x minus 3 less than or equal to 5x squared plus 10x plus 5. You can move it all to the left. You end up with 4x squared minus 4x minus 8 less than or equal to 0. I'm going to take a 4 out in common and divide both sides by 4. That's x squared minus x minus 2 less than or equal to 0. And then from here, how do I solve quadratic inequality? Well, I'm going to let x squared minus x minus 2 equal 0 so that I can give it a quick sketch for myself so that I can see where this is less than or equal to 0. So solving this, I end up with x minus 2 is one bracket and x plus 1 is the other, equal to 0, which means x is equal to 2, x is equal to minus 1. I know that if this is the one that I'm graphing, it's a U-shaped graph. So I'm just going to give myself a little sketch here, crossing at 2 and minus 1. And I know it's less than or equal to 0 anywhere here. And the way I describe that is that x is between minus 1 and 2. But I just remember from the start of the question, x cannot be minus 1. So I need to have an empty circle there. So my final answer is actually x is less than or equal to 2, x is greater than minus 1, and it says from the start x is an element of R. Part B of that question is to do with solving an equation. And the equation is x plus 1 all over x is equal to 10 all over 3. And it says x is an element of R, but x cannot be 0. And again, that just makes mathematical sense there. So I'm going to multiply across by x and multiply by across by 3. So if I just firstly multiply across by x, I end up with x squared plus 1 is equal to 10x all over 3. And then I'm going to multiply by 3. This should be actually a straightforward question here, hopefully for you. Plus 3 is equal to 10x. That gives me 3x squared minus 10x plus 3 equals 0. You're going to solve that and you're going to end up with x is equal to a third and x is equal to 3. And then that's part 1. B part 2 says using your answers from above, solve the equation. So I'm using the answer that x is equal to a third and x is equal to 3. While in part 2 it says that 9 to the power of x is equal to 1 all over 9 to the power of x. plus 1 all over 9 to the power of x is equal to 10 over 3. And that looks very similar to the original equation that I had in part 1. The only difference is, it's 9 to the power of x, and the previous one, it was just an x, and this was 1 all over x in the previous one. So it seems as though they've replaced 9 to the power of x with instead of the x in the previous question. And I know the x in the previous question is a third, or the x in the previous question. So what they've replaced in this question and the previous one is a 9 to the power of x, and it's equal to 3. So now I could just use logs from here, or you might want to use your rules of indices. So that's 3 to the power 2x. There's my 9. Is equal to 3 to the power minus 1. That means 2x is equal to minus 1. X is equal to minus a half. And here, again, that's 3 to the power 2x is equal to 3. 2x therefore is equal to the 1. X is equal to a half.